Hi, this is Regina White Favors with a new series titled Overcoming Soul-Tie Setback. And this series is really geared towards the concept of recidivism and how men often go back and forth to prison on just the basic ideology that they're not afraid to go back. And so I wanted to take some time to think about this because soul ties can be formed in different ways. Usually it's through sex, and it's usually manifested within a romantic relationship. But you can build soul ties in different ways with friendships, family relationships, co-workers, right? We often hear this ideal about having a work husband or a work wife, and that is essentially a soul tie because they can't be soulmates if they are um, individually with other people. And so, this ideal about soul tie is something that I want to apply to the concept of recidivism, which I am going to begin the process of researching now after this presentation. But this is Overcoming Soul Tie Setback, and it is tailored for men who go back and forth to prison. But it can apply to more than one context, more than one person, and of course, another gender. So uh, please take some time to listen to this presentation, gain insight wherever you feel that you can gain insight, and hopefully it will help you. So this particular presentation is subject to fair use because I am going to reference some scriptures and then also some research briefly on recidivism. A forthcoming bibliography or annotated bibliography is to be determined. So here's some brief facts about recidivism. So recidivism is defined as the tendency of a convicted criminal to reoffend. And so here is a U.S. Department of Justice uh, reference. So, a U.S. Department of Justice analysis of recidivism rates in 24 states concluded that 82% of individuals released from state prisons were rearrested at least once during the 10 years following release. Within 1 year of release, 43% of formerly incarcerated people were rearrested. And so you can get more information about this on the Bureau of Justice Statistics website. And then also, men are more likely to return to prison due to criminal peer associations, carrying weapons, alcohol abuse, and aggressive feelings. And so, uh, when you're thinking about recidivism between men and women, the rates tend to be higher for men. And there's more research on that I want to just kind of take some time to think about later. So here's our scriptural basis because I'm going to think about recidivism from the standpoint of both scripture and romantic relationships and how we kind of create this ideal of going back and forth as if we are actually in a romantic relationship. But the scriptural basis is Proverbs 26:11 that I'm basing my larger discussion on. As a dog returns to his vomit, so a fool repeats his folly. And so if you have someone going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, whether that person is in a relationship, a romantic relationship, or going back and forth into prison, they are returning to some aspect of the folly that they developed while in that particular context, whether it's relationship or prison. And so you get the image of the dog returning to his vomit, and you would think to yourself, why would a dog ever return to his vomit? Why would an animal return to, uh, well, let's put it like this. Why would an animal eat feces? Why would an animal um, decide to eat something that is not healthy for them? And no, the animal may not have an understanding about what is healthy, especially if they're in the wild and it's whatever they got to eat, that's what they got to eat. But then you put it on the human level and you think to yourself, Why does a human continue to return to the very thing that is causing him or her um, harm, or to return to something like a cage where they seem to feel more comfortable, and it's something that they know. A lot of times people struggle to move forward in life because it's part of the unknown. The problem with that, however, is that do you want to base the majority of your life, your working years, these are your working years that you're spending in prison, and then coming out and then returning again? And it's likely because you didn't have a plan. It's likely because you knew that you can always use it as an option. When you think about it in terms of a relationship, where a man is go, entering and exiting a relationship with a partner, whether that person is married or not, you know that you can always come back. You know that you can always circle back to that person, to that woman, usually a man with a woman, and get your needs met, get your companionship needs met. And the human basic needs is food, clothes, and shelter. And so if you find yourself going back and forth to prison as a man, it is because you still want certain needs met: food, clothing, shelter. That also means that you are not adopting an adult mindset when you feel like you need the prison to take care of you, to parent you, to manage you, because you can't manage yourself. You don't know how to parent yourself. You don't know how to conduct yourself as an adult. If you're making the types of decisions that keep you in prison, repeatedly going back and forth, that means you have not grown into a mature understanding of how to um, run yourself, run your life, run yourself. Getting into criminal peer associations and exercising and exhibiting aggressive behavior is something that you cannot sustain long term. You can stay in prison and be there for 20, 25 years and likely have to sustain it because you have no other choice. But at some point, you're going to think about that and you're going to wish that you did not have to be in that kind of mindset. So that's our scriptural basis. Keep this in mind, that as a dog returns to his vomit, so a fool repeats his folly. Just keep repeating the exact same folly. That means you're not learning. You're not, and that means that the folly that you keep repeating is something that is working for you. Because if it was no longer working for you, you will find another folly, right, so to speak, right? But as long as it's working for you, your mind tells itself that it's working, so there's no need to grow or do anything else. And that's dangerous because you never accomplish anything in life much more meaningful. So, what is a soul tie? On a very basic, simple understanding, it is an emotional connection, and it is an attachment between two people, and the interaction tends to be prolonged. And so, the attachment, the word that you see there, attachment, is much more related to the psychology understanding of attachment. Your attachment can be insecure or secure. When you have a secure attachment, you tend to feel like you can depend on the person who is acting as a caregiver. Here it is: you are an infant, and the infant is crying, and the caregiver or parent responds to the infant, right? And so there is a reliability on the caregiver. However, when you come from an insecure attachment, it can be ambivalent or avoidant. When you are a baby and you cry, your parent or caregiver did not respond to you immediately. The caregiver responded to you on his or her own time. So then you learned, you were taught um, the, the differences between conveniences, whether or not you were responded to quickly, or whether or not you were responded to in their own time, which breeds inconsistency. So then, as a baby, you grow up into toddlerhood, and the parent is still not responding to you. Every time you cry, every time you have an issue, you can't depend on that parent to provide you emotional um, comfort or emotional response. And if they do, it's yelling, it's screaming, It could lead to spanking. It could lead to a number of things. And so then that speaks to the parenting style, which you have four major types I always go over in all my presentations: authoritative, authoritarian, permissive, and uninvolved. And when you have an authoritative parent, that parent creates teachable moments, so that if you have an issue and you're not doing something or you're going down the wrong path, the parent will sit you down and have a conversation with you concerning that particular issue and create a teachable moment so that you can take it wherever you are going, whether it's to the schoolhouse or later to the high school, and then further later to your own life, and in the workforce. Authoritarian parents tend to be the types of parents that we usually are used to, the ones who say, do it because I said so. They don't give you an explanation. They don't help you understand the reason why you really need to do it. They just say, do it because I say so. Well, a lot of times they've been breeded the same way. Their parents responded to them in the same kind of way. And so now they are passing it down to you. And now it actually becomes a burden on you, because then you are walking around blind because you still don't know why you are doing it just because the person says so. And so authoritarian parents tend to be harsh. They tend to manipulate and control the child. They tend to be aggressive, right, depending upon the family context. The situations, the family dynamic can be definitely toxic. And you can find multiple types of children within either parenting style, like the scapegoat, the invisible child, the golden child, right? And you can find it in great parent homes, two parent homes, and you can find it in single parent homes, good and great, great or not so great, right? And so what it is that you are taught and passed down with certain core values that you then adopt, um, without any really intervention, and then you begin to apply it in your life in other areas because that's what you know. A lot of times we attract the wrong types of people because it's what we are used to, what we have been accustomed to, what we have been exposed to. If you haven't been exposed to a person with some sense, and all the people that you have been exposed to, including your family dynamic, or people without sense, without common sense about things, then you're going to carry out your life without self-reflection. You're going to carry out your life in the very same way until you realize, okay, I can't do this anymore. I don't like this. This is stupid. It's time to change. And so then the permissive parent is always the parent who just allows and permits whatever you want to do with your life, without really any guardrails, without any direction. And then of course the uninvolved parent is just not involved at all. Is the word itself speaks for itself. That the parent kind of lets the child be an adult at 12 years old, and the child is driving and carrying on life like it is an adult, and then the child makes the types of decisions that are criminal based decisions, and the child is confused because you have an authority figure permitting him or her to be able to do whatever he wants to do. But then you have the authority in the law and the police who's telling the child that you can't do that. You can't do whatever you want to do, right? You are not grown. You are not an adult. And so then these different soul ties are formed because then there's a soul tie with the child and the parent, uh, who is permissive or uninvolved, and that child learns how to deal with that parent from that perspective. Then you have the child with the parent who is authoritarian and is always manipulating and controlling the child psychologically. And then you have a parent who actually responds and creates teachable moments, and the child can actually depend upon the parent for help and guidance and direction. And so all these kids of authoritative, authoritarian, permissive, and uninvolved parents are roaming the city, and eventually they're all going to collide. And so sometimes they collide and they create even more soul ties. And so then you have soul ties with education professionals and friendships and the jail and the store person, if you have a summer job, if you have a job in high school, you got all these different types of soul ties that are forming. And sometimes it is clear that one is good, and sometimes it's clear that one is not good. Regardless, they're all emotional connections. They're all some form of attachment, whether insecure or secure, and they tend to be prolonged interaction. If you have somebody who joined a game and they have stayed in that game for so many years, okay, that's a prolonged interaction. It's a soul tie, and that's all you know. That's all you have been reared in. That's been your education. If you have a person who has been homeless for 25 years or more, then go back to the family dynamic. Did did the parents move a lot, or did the parents kick the child out a lot, or did the parents have to go? Did the child have to go live with his grandparents? Right. It's a number of things. So then that's a soul tie to homelessness, soul tie to gang activity, soul tie to a toxic family dynamic. And so these are the people that you're going to see and encounter and realize that they all have soul ties in different ways. So just keep this in mind as you go through the presentation. One of the things I keep hearing a lot of times when I watch some videos from viral crimes or something like that, where the woman was dating some man in prison, then he got out and he came to live with her, and then the situation kind of became toxic, and it led to her death, and sometimes his death as well, right? In a murder suicide. What I found, what I keep hearing a lot of times in those types of videos, and then just every day when I hear people talking or something like that, when they've been in prison before, is that I'm not afraid to go back. It's kind of like a universal resolve, especially with men. And these have been men. I haven't heard a woman say, truly, I'm not afraid to go back. She might say, I'm not afraid to go to jail or something like that. Okay, that's jail, right? But I'm talking about these are men who have gotten out of prison. And it was something about prison that they liked it more than they liked being on the outside. And that's kind of like a universal resolve. You will see this, it doesn't matter the city, the state. It's a man who comes out and feels like he is not afraid if you call the police on him. And then the irony is you call the police on them and then they try to fight you because they don't want to go back. It's strange, but they say I'm not afraid to go back, like it's some badge of honor, like they got some badge on them that's gold star, and they're wearing a uniform, and they're saying I'm not afraid to go back. And it's like they're so used to living in that type of mindset in prison. It is literally what they understand and what they know and what they believe to be the way you are supposed to conduct your life, and not being afraid. So why isn't it, why aren't you uh why aren't you not afraid to go back? You should be afraid to have to strip naked and they search you. You should be afraid. Oh, let's go back even prior to that. You should be afraid when someone has to put handcuffs on you. You should be afraid when someone has to strip you and search you and touch your person. You should be afraid to have to walk down the hallway with all your stuff, knowing that other people are mocking you, which is so ironic that people will mock you while they're in the exact same state that you're in. It reminds me of Shawshank Redemption when the new prisoners are coming in, and the prisoners who are already there have been there for decades are mocking the new people coming in. And I understand what they're doing. It's some sort of initiation, get you ready for this type of mindset type thing. But I would think you would weep for the new people coming in because you've been there for so long. You wouldn't want them to experience what you are experiencing now. I, Too many times, I mean, I've dealt with someone in my past who hurt me, but even I, in that situation with how that person hurt me, I still would not wish that person on him. I wouldn't wish him on him. I wouldn't wish the way that he treated me on him. So it's interesting to me that people will mock and laugh and jest while you're coming in, while they're already in. You're going to be wearing the same uniforms, not uniforms, but prison clothes. You're going to have the same, you're going to have your own cage, right? The same cages. You're going to have to eat the same food, eat chow. You're going to have to do all the very things that they are now mocking you for. And it's strange to me. So I guess what happens is you get used to the order. When you say I'm not afraid to go back, I guess you get used to the step by step ordering and the psychological trauma that is attached to having to be marched to your cage and having to put your mat on either the floor or the concrete bed, and maybe being able to put a picture on there. And the thing is, it becomes your home, because what happens a lot of times when people go back and forth is they didn't feel like they were at home at their home. And that comes from childhood. That's not something that starts at 18, 19, 20 years old. You didn't feel like your home was your home when you were young. And so then you went searching out for places to create a home, pulling at people emotionally, creating soul ties, and hoping against hope that that situation is going to last long, when in reality it does not last long. They end up kicking you out because there's something on you that that people feel like they can mistreat you and kick you out and um, um, have no regard or respect for you. And it could be also you're not doing your part, you're not contributing or something like that. But I think people frame you to kick you out. I think people frame you to offend you. I think people frame you to mistreat you and disrespect you, even if you had a job and brought money in. I think they do it on purpose because you are vulnerable and you don't have any other place to go. And so then you build a soul tie with that situation off hope. Hope that they'll let you stay. Hope that they'll let you have one more month. If I give you $300, $400, $500, let me stay here until I get back on my feet. And then they'll give you this false sense of understanding. Sure, you can stay here until you get back on your feet. And then out of the blue, they kick you out. And so then you live in this type of state where you're always kicked out, where you're always mistreated, where you're always punked. They try to punk you in a situation where you always have to hold your tongue, where they try to provoke you to anger so they can touch on tap into your triggers, and then they can feel justified in kicking you out. So then when you get to a point where you're saying I'm not afraid to go back, it's because likely you have dealt with so many types of people who claimed that they wanted to help you, and you were trying to get help from them, and they wouldn't help you. They got jealous of the help that they were giving you. And so then you just get to a point where, you know what, I'm not afraid to go back, because I know implicit in that statement is this idea that I know that I can depend on the prison. I know I can depend on the jail. I know I can depend on the warden. I know I can depend on all the people. I know who my enemies are. the the rec yard, I know who my enemies are. I know who my six is. I know what to expect. When I come out here in the free world, all these different people who filter their language with me, who don't tell me the truth, who try to make me out to be like I'm such a problem. Okay, I can't deal with that, because then it gets into the psychology of dealing with them, and then that's my head, that's my mind. It's just better to go back to prison. So I'm not afraid to go back. And so that's one of the things that I realized, that that statement right there creates a soul tie. You create a soul tie with that statement alone, or you create a soul tie. You create a soul tie to that statement, so that you hold it up like it's some idol. It's almost like an idol that you serve, you place on the altar. You might as well have a sign, have a T-shirt, have a business, have something like that, because I'm not afraid to go back. I'm not afraid to go back is something that you hang a flag on. You you put a picture on the wall for. You cook every day with that type of statement, right? Of course, it's within the prison system and everything that you are doing. So you just basically get used to the routine of that system, and you're not afraid to go back, which is ironic because you are getting you support the routine of the prison, but not the routine of um, creating a life plan. So, prison as a belief system with core values is something that I want to consider in terms of foundational understanding that there are life core values outside of the prison, and then there are core values inside the prison. The thing about life, when you're thinking about life and your life choices, when you're going back and forth to prison, that's death. That's death to yourself, death to any ideal that you might have, death to your understanding, death to whatever heart situation. There's this guy in prison, I forget his name, and I'm gonna have to research it. But he developed a love for investing and stock market investing while in prison. Now he didn't know that he had that ability, or if he did know, he probably was good at math in school, because investing is a higher level of math, finances and everything. But he studied and learned, and he developed a love for investing, stock market investing. But he's in prison. He can trade. I think he can trade and everything. And I think he gave a TED talk one time, but he did it in his prison blues. And so now he has almost created another type of cage uh, for himself, even though he's free. He's like a bird in a cage, but free in his mind, but caged in his body. He can't freely leave out. And I've always wondered why there wasn't some business investor who might have advocated on his behalf so that he can get out. And I'm going to have to research him again because it's been so many years that I known about this. But it's interesting that the core values, the prison as a belief system with core values, is one thing that I don't really have to. Um, I don't have to fight for my life and create a life plan while I'm in prison because I'm in prison. And prison is my life. Prison is my life. And that's why you get people who leave the prison with the same kind of understanding struggling because they have adopted the belief system that prison is their life. That's what they understand. I mean, you have some of these people who have been in prison for so many years, then you got people who are down for life, and it is their life. They have given over their life. They have laid their very life down to take up death. And even if they take up goals in life, even if they take up strategies, even if they're dreaming, right? They're dreaming while residing in a graveyard. That's really what that is. They're dreaming while residing in a grave. They have taken up residence in a graveyard. And so the ones who are lifers, they're never getting out. You can be on death row for double-digit years, but that's you're a walking dead person. So when you adopt this idea that prison is as a belief system with core values, a lot of times core values is sort of like having integrity, having a strong work ethic, um, pursuing financial stability, different types of core values. You're doing that within a cage. You're doing that under a warden's eye. Someone's foot is on your neck. So then, if that's the case, if we look at it from that foundational understanding, and of course, there's some sort of link back to what they saw in childhood. If the parent always isolated the child and pushed the child back into the room and couldn't come out, and if they did, if the child did, they would get a whooping or something like that. You see that kind of manifested in who they are today as an adult, who that person is today as an adult, and that they are still isolated. They're still back in that room. They're still in a toxic relationship with their parent. And the foundational understanding leads us to this idea that um, they're only willing to see prison as their life, and that's why it's much easier for them to usher themselves into criminal activity so they can go back. I think to myself all the time, people who get out and they go and live with some woman. A man goes and lives with some woman, and you would think that the home that she's trying to provide for him, which is still out of order, the home that she's trying to provide for him, you would think he would be happier with the bed. You would think he would be happier in the apartment where he can control the air conditioning. You would think he would be happier with the food that he can cook. You would think he would be happier with the coffee that he can make. But no, because when you think about it on in terms of Tom Hanks' movie Castaway, he was on that island for so many years, basically caged and open at the same time. When he finally got back to his home state, and they gave him a penthouse of an apart of a hotel room, he didn't sleep in the bed. He didn't sleep in the bed. He slept on the floor. He acted like he was still on the island, even though he was free. He was found. He can go on, carry on with his life. But those initial moments, he 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 acted like he was still in the cage. It only what sort of helped him to move him out of that understanding was a package that he saved to give back to a person, and he didn't know who that person was. It turned out to be a woman, etc. And that his integrity for the packages that he tried to protect led him down that road to meeting that woman. Uh, so his core values sort of pulled him out of this understanding in terms of living on the island, his mindset on the island while free. But with many people who are coming out of prison, unless they have something that they can hold on to, because the taking a package sort of broke the soul tie to the island. It wasn't the bed. It wasn't the food that he got, the free food that he got. No, it was the package, and keeping in mind that he needed to go and take that package to that person is what kind of broke the soul tie for him. And plus, realization of other areas with the woman that he had to leave behind, etc. So unless a person who is getting out of prison has something that they can hold on to guide them down a different path, they're going to be the ones who always believe that prison is their life. And they're going to hold to that belief system and adopt different core values to sustain that foundational understanding. So now I want to get into this idea that prison is a romantic mate, because when you are building and forming and sustaining soul ties in a romantic relationship, a lot of times that is considered relationship building. And so then that is typical of a romantic partnership. The first time you're getting to know that person, you get all excited, you get the butterflies, and then you have conversations, then you have sex, then you go out to the movies, then you cook, then you do all these different things that are relationship things. Well, I'm suggesting when you're building a soul tie with prison and sustaining that soul tie with prison, in terms of going back and forth, is no different than going back and forth in a relationship. That you have adopted a relationship with prison, that is almost a romantic ideal. It's almost aspirational in a sense that you're not reaching towards something to do something better to your life. You're using prison as an aspiration to return to it. And when you have a soul tie with an individual, there's something about that individual that pulls you, that triggers you, that makes you want to be with the person. You want to make love to the person. You want to have sex with the person. You want to eat food with the person. You want to do as much as you can with the person, because being away from the person really affects you in a negative way. You cry, you get angry, you get heartbroken, you want to talk to people. Sometimes you pull at somebody else, right? And I go over that as well. And it is a romantic mate. It's something about prison that people have romanticized, that people who have gone in and out of prison have romanticized. The men in the prison become become your brothers. Sometimes they become your mates. Um, in a romantic sense. The men, you have this camaraderie with each other. You both know about each other. You know about all the different men. You know about all the different uh, groups that are separated by race. And so you're looking at demographics, right? You're looking at gender characteristics. You're looking at group dynamics, um, group formations. You are looking at authority, right? Within those groups, you have an authority figure, right? The leader. Then you're looking at the authority of the system that you're all up under, right? You're looking at that hierarchy of authority for which you don't, for which you can't really participate. So then you try to create a mock hierarchy within your group. You, you're looking at a system of government, right? Facilitating policies and laws. I think prisoners come in, they get a handbook or something like that. That structure and organization. And you would think then that if you're up under that kind of structure and organization, that and you try to mimic it and adopt it and sometimes mock it, that when you got out, you would have some sense of structure and organization that you need to adopt. And so, why is it that you don't mimic that on the outside? You don't mimic it on the outside. You don't create a structured, organized understanding of life outside of prison. So then it goes back to the soul tie aspect of this situation, where prison is a romantic mate for you. It's something that you can you can depend upon emotionally, and it's like a companion that you're holding hands with as you walk down the sidewalk. It's like a companion where you hugged up in the house and you're watching a movie. It's like a companion that you sleep with and you roll around in the bed with. It's like a companion when you take showers with that person. It's like a companion when you eat dinner with that person and you discuss the day, right? It's a companion. Prison is a companion, it's a romantic mate. And so, if you want to get out of this idea of going back and forth to prison, you're going to have to address this situation, the situation that you're in, and 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 begin to resolve your misunderstanding of where you are. You are in a prison. You are not with a romantic partner. And it doesn't matter if you formed a romantic relationship with a fellow prisoner. You both cannot be in relationship with each other and date each other while you are in prison. The same is true of a woman who is dating a man in prison. You're not dating anyone. He's in prison. You're on the outside. You're putting money on his books. You're visiting him while he's in prison. But you have created this fantasy and this ideal about who he is and what you guys are going to do, and you're going to be big bosses, and he's your king, and you are his queen, when you both equally have a relationship with the prison, not with each other. And so prison as a romantic mate is something that is really interesting, when I was thinking about it, in terms of creating this presentation, because you don't have a relationship with each other. It looks like it because you're writing letters, you're sending money, you're sending postcards, you're kissing, you visit, you do all these different things that look like a relationship, but it's a false ideal. You are not in relationship with each other. You are in relationship with the prison. And that's something that I want you to understand, because when it comes to your ability to be able to see him, you see him on the basis of the prison telling you that you can see him, not on the basis of you signing up and putting your name on the waiting list and saying I want to see him. You don't run anything. You both don't run anything. You are subject to the guiding laws and policies and guidelines of the prison. So that's who you actually have a relationship with. So prison as an emotional connection, which is, of course, the soul tie. I need it. It needs me. If you're going back and forth to prison, that means you believe the prison needs you. In a very strange sense, it doesn't necessarily mean it has to be true, but you must believe it, because if you didn't think someone needed you, just in general, you wouldn't go back to that person. How many times have men felt like the woman that they were with um, kind of push them away, and then act like they need them, and they may use the language of, oh, she's an independent woman, she don't need me, all that kind of stuff. But how many times have they walked away? They didn't believe that they were needed, and so if they didn't believe that they were needed, they left and got with someone that they believed that they were needed for, right? And it's usually women who need to be needed more than anything, because they're the ones who do all of the heavy investing. They tend to operate in the role of provider when the man is actually supposed to be the provider, or the husband, because no single woman or no single man should submit to each other. You're not married. It's not a marital context, right? And so, if you're going back and forth, because in reality, the prison system does need you. They need you. They need you in terms of the numbers. They need you in terms of the statistics. They need you in terms of being able to get grant dollars, federal dollars, sometimes investment dollars from another private individual. They do need you. But you are operating with this false sense of understanding that the prison needed you, because if you thought that the prison did not need you and did not accept you, and pushed you away, and provoked you to anger to the point that they don't want you in the house, quote unquote the house, then you wouldn't return. Why return to a place that you feel is not serving you? It's not helping you. It's not believing in you. It's not engendering trust between you and the prison. Why keep returning to something like that uh, when you don't feel like it needs you? Because you must believe that it needs you. And by extension, you need it. Change the order. I need it, it needs me, or it needs me, I need it. It doesn't matter. You believe that the prison needs you. That's why you keep returning. Because if you think about it on simple relationship terms, you would not go back and forth to a place that you felt like you didn't go back and forth to a person that you felt didn't need you. One thing about it, again, women need to be needed more than men, but men do need to feel like there's a goal and a purpose for what they're doing with that relationship. When they feel like they don't need that person anymore, just in general, from a male perspective, like a woman, they go and find another woman. They go and create dating rotations, and they do anything to go where they feel like they are needed and not tolerated. And all people understand when they are um, being tolerated, right? But if you didn't think for one moment, I want you to really think about this. I want you to really consider it. If you didn't think for one moment that the prison, I mean, if you thought for one moment that the prison did not need you, would you still go back? But it serves you. It serves you. You can depend on it. They need you. They need you um, to do the laundry. They need you to serve chow. They need you to sweep the floors, mop the floors. They need you to be a trustee sometimes. They need you. Here it is, you come out and you can't find anyone who needs you. So then you go back to your soul tie because you felt needed. But if the prison and all the inhabitants of the prison pushed you out and said with their words, "We don't need you here," would you go back? Would you go back? That's something you want to think about. If they did that, maybe they need to do that. What happens is they usher you through an exit planning process. So you got some people who actually want you to go and leave and stay gone, but then you got a lot of friends you have adopted a relationship with and soul tie with who actually want you to come back. They they'll even use the language as if they are expecting you to come back, which means they're mocking you. They don't believe that you're going to stay gone. Man, you'll be back, man. Man, I know you, man. You'll be back. And so maybe they are projecting their own insecurities about leaving and possibly returning. Uh, but the mocking is triggering you to the point that you are sort of uncertain. There's a lack of certainty about whether or not you will return. Because if you thought that you had a solid plan to leave and stay gone, uh, you would adopt that as a solid plan to leave and stay gone. You might even move in silence and not tell anybody about anything, about any of your plans, because once you do that, it makes it even easier for them to target you. But now that you have developed this emotional connection, you feel like the prison needs you. Again, think about it in terms of a relationship that you have. I want you to truly think about it in terms of a relationship you have. Most men, when they don't feel like they are needed in a relationship with women, with a certain type of woman, they leave. They pack their bags and they go. That doesn't necessarily mean that they won't come back and get sex from the person or get money from the person or anything like that. But once they decide to leave, they go on ahead and leave and stay gone, right? And so, but if they felt like they were needed around the house, they would stay. They was. I'm not saying they wouldn't do stupid stuff, but they typically will stay. So if you're going back and forth to prison, that means you feel like the prison needs you, and by extension, you feel like you need it. So prison as a rebound is kind of like a placeholder ideology, and we understand what a rebound is. Usually, when you get out of a relationship with someone, with your core partner, your main partner, and then you're so wounded by that to the point that you just don't want to be alone, and so then you go and reach and pull at someone who is really going to fall up under the category of rebound, but you're going to sell that person a dream that they are really a core partner when they're really not, and you use that person as a placeholder until the person you really want to be with comes back around, right? Until that person comes back around. And so when they don't come back around, you tend to sustain the rebound relationship. You have no intention of marrying the person, and even if you did marry the person, your intention is to go and cheat with the ex partner or cheat with a new partner. The new partner is going to be the upgrade from the rebound. But as long as you can sustain the rebound relationship to get whatever needs you need to get met, you're going to use it as a placeholder. Where I see that men who go back and forth into prison, because they haven't learned the most important aspect of adulthood, which is go get a job, go get their own place, keep their own place. That's it. Don't go from your mother's house to your girlfriend's house, no matter what she says. And women are bad at this. Women are bad at this. We're saying, Well, I know we're going to be together, so we might as well just go on ahead and move in together, and then we can get married. That's getting out of order. That's getting out of, and that's creating order, and it's creating a man who's going to feel emasculated because you're taking over the relationship. And so when men use prison as a rebound, it's a placeholder. So every time they come out and they try to make life work with whomever, and it doesn't work out, they have one foot in that relationship and one foot back in the prison. So they know that they can always rebound back to prison, that because the prison will always accept you. That's something you don't ever have to worry about. So that alleviates worry because you know that the prison will always accept you. But it's a false sense of acceptance, though. It's a false sense. They're not accepting you because they are emotionally um, invested in you. They are accepting you because they are financially invested in you. There's more money on the head of a person who keeps coming back, going back and forth in prison, than the person who has stayed and finished their term and don't come back at all. There's more money on the person who goes back and forth. So rebounding only creates more revenue and profit potential for the jails and the prisons and the state and the people who are employed, right? The people who are now the correctional officers and the staff. You're creating jobs for them. Every time you rebound back to prison, you're creating jobs for them. And if you do any job uh, um, within the prison to get money, it's only going to be under $1. You know, 50 cents for the week or $1 for the week or something like that. It may be a little higher for certain states, right? But it's not like it's going to be $18 an hour. If you're willing to work in the prison, you should be willing to work outside of the prison. And I get it that there are some factors that may prohibit you from working in certain types of fields or something like that. But it's not impossible. So you're creating, yes, the prison does need you. You're creating jobs. You are creating jobs for people who then go home to their house and cook their own food and don't have the jail on their neck. Don't have to deal with the warden after 5 o'clock, right? They put in a shift 8:30 to 5, 10:30 to 7, 9:30 to 6, 11:30 to 8, and then they can go home. So yes, the prison does need you. Every time you rebound to the prison, you are making sure those people maintain their livelihood. You got to cry about that. You got to think about that. You got to grieve about that. Because if you stay out, it affects the state's quota. It affects the investors' quota. The more people stay out, I noticed that there's this high rate of drugs on the in the streets, and many people were staying out of prison and not going into prison. There was a whole season of that, and then all of a sudden you got this high drug activity, fentanyl, people dying, etc. And so people are returning to prisons. A lot of the younger generation today, and I don't know the generational terminology, whether it's Gen Z or millennial. I'm Gen X. A lot of them are just reckless. I mean, like reckless to there's reckless, and then there's violently reckless, where they literally don't care about going to prison or going back to prison. So they're rebounding from some other situation that's going on in their life. And it's much easier to deal with prison than to deal with the current situation in their life. It could be a family member, it could be dealing with a job, not being able to get a job or something like that. And the only way that you're going to really get a job and do what you need to do is to get some kind of education, whether it's vocational education, whether it's college education, whether it's a certificate program. The only way that you're going to be able to pull yourself out of your current situation, and whatever type of situation you're in, you're going to have to get some education. Even if you get a CDL license, you take truck driving classes or something like that, and you can build on that and have your own business. It's still something. It's still education. And what people want to do is keep rebounding back to prison, but they don't want to go the education route. You can spend more time in a classroom and learn and get yourself out of the current situation than to go back and forth to prison. That's wasting time. That's what placeholder ideology is. It's time wasting. My mate does not want me right now. She kicked me out of the house. Okay, and so I need somewhere to live. I need food, clothing, shelter. So I'm going to pull at this person over here to get what I need until my mate decides, my main girl decides to take me back. That's placeholder ideology. You'll never get out of that race. You'll never get out of that cage if you continue to rebound to prison. So now we're looking at prison as a dating rotation, and it's basically different perspectives and prolonged toleration. So remember that the soul tie is a prolonged interaction. When you see people men on podcasts, red pill men, passport bros, MGTOW, which are men who go their own way. Then you have SYSBM, Save Yourself Black Man. You have all these different types of ideologies that are floating on YouTube, TikTok, and different types of websites. And one of those ideologies is the dating rotation. And so there was this man that I saw on a YouTube channel, and he was talking about how he has a dating rotation. He has a woman that he has who gives him money, has a woman who cooks for him, has a woman who comes and cleans his house, has a woman he can go to the movies with, and then he just has women for other different areas, some sneaky sex, all different types of. He sleeps with all of the women. He sleeps with all of them, but they all serve an individual purpose, like a individual perspective. Um, and so he tolerates it for however long he wants to tolerate it, but he really tolerates it based upon the women tolerating him. So when I look at and think about prison as a dating rotation, I think about it from the idea that um, that the person's perspective of prison is one that it serves a certain kind of need for them. The obvious need is always going to be food, clothing, shelter. So then, if you're looking at those three needs, okay, these are individual mates, right? Food is a mate, shelter is a mate, and clothes is a mate, right? And you're looking at prison as sort of like those individuals who serve those individual needs. Why would you feel the need to have to leave prison and get your own place and do for yourself? If you have all these different people who are doing for you and you're satisfied and you're happy and you don't feel like it's a burden on you to receive from them, why would you feel like you would need to leave? And if you look at from the male's perspective of all the women in his dating rotation, he could easily say, then why if I got all these women doing all these different things for me and I still get sex from all of them, why would I need to get married? There's no need for me to get married. There's no success, any necessity. The women that I have would do what I want, and if either one of those women decides that she does not want to do what I want, I know I can kick her out of the dating rotation, go get another, and put her in rotation. So when you think about prison as a dating rotation, prison is like I got all these different options. I got different options, and I know that prison will be. I can put prison in rotation whenever I want. If I'm feeling like I can't manage my life outside of prison, if I feel like if my girl wants to act up with me and kick me out and all that kind of stuff, Okay, I'll just put prison in rotation and I go back. And I know I'm not going to really stay for a long time because, I'm the kind of prisoner they always kick out anyway. So I probably stay good. I'm quite sure I can do about a year. Sometimes the return could be 3 to 5 years. Okay, I can do a 5 year stint. Sure. Yeah, I can do it. I got a plan. So they have a plan to stay in prison and manage themselves in prison, but not adopt a plan or strategy to stay out of prison. They'll just put prison back in rotation. If you see somebody who is 40 years old, 50 years old, and they have been in and out of prison for 10 years, 20 years, 10 times, 5 times. Okay, they put prison in rotation because when you leave, prison should not be an option. It should not be uh, a choice to return to. And if you are returning multiple times, that means you are setting it up as an option. You're setting it up as a choice. You're going to put it in rotation because you know that the prisons are not going anywhere. The prisons are not going anywhere. States are not going to all of a sudden say, we're going to get rid of all the prisons and everybody's going to have to live like they're supposed to live as an adult. No more prisons. States will shut down schools. States will shut down hospitals. States will shut down any essential services, any public funded nursing homes, uh, uh, public government sponsored apartments, Section 8, etc. They'll shut down all of that before they shut down a prison. And understand and knowing and understanding that, that's why I feel a lot of people keep going back and forth because they know beyond a shadow of a doubt that prison is going to be there. There's no way they're going to shut down. So then they just put it in rotation. They know that you mean to tell me you don't know the consequences of getting out of your car with your gun and going into a 7-Eleven and robbing it, that it's not going to lead to prison? Of course you do. A lot of times people want to put it on this level where I couldn't get nobody to help me and no one would get me a job and just a number of different perspectives on it. But at the end of the day, you are doing what you want to do. Because if you did not want to do that, you would do all that you could to stay away from it. Sometimes it's hard because there's a soul tie connection to a criminal behavior. There's a soul tie connection to the aggressive behavior. There's a soul tie connection to the people that you hang around, your peer relationship. And so you got to make a decision. I can't continue to do this anymore. I may have to move, get somewhere, do what I got to do. Maybe put in a transfer to another city and state. I don't know. It's going to be difficult because you attract who and what you are, especially if you have not engaged in any form of self reflection. But if you're going back and forth to prison, that means you put it in rotation. All right, so prison as a life option. So that means you believe it is dependable and reliable. If you didn't believe it was dependable and reliable and you couldn't rely on it, you wouldn't go back. Just as clear as that, you wouldn't go back. There would be no need to go back. Think about the people, uh, think about your family dynamic. You know you can't depend upon them. So you try to stay away from them. Every time you turn around, you try to need something or get something from them. They punk you. They have you do something. They provoke you to anger. They might even go so far as to say they don't want you. They kind of have their foot on your neck. They do everything that they can to show you that they don't want you there. And so then you try to stay away from that. You don't go back unless you get to a point where you're doing better in life. They find out and then they pull at you emotionally and psychologically and financially to give them something, uh, to give them what they want. But as soon as they get what they want from you, they drop you. They kick you away. They set you up. They do everything they can to get you out of their lives. A lot of times that has something to do with instruction. They don't want to receive instruction from you. They don't want to receive, because a lot of times people who have struggled in this area of going to prison, going back to prison, it has a lot to do with rejection, and that they were actually good students in school, and they tutored. They tended to do the right things, right? And people mocked them for that. People made them feel bad, peer pressured, and then they found themselves people pleasing, right, to make them happy. And so the very same dynamic that you struggled with on the outside of dealing with people who rejected you, you find still on the inside of prison. You don't run away from it. Going to prison is not an opportunity for you to run away from your family, to run away from your friendships and your peer relationships and bullies and things like that. You just run from them and run smack into them and other people who are in the prison. You're going to find a bully. You're going to always find a bully that you have to stand up to. You're going to always find like a mother figure type person. You're going to always find a father figure. You're going to always establish soul tie relationships with the men in terms of brotherly type relationships. If you were molested when you were younger as a man, you're going to find that same type of spirit in someone else in that prison. That person is going to stalk you and harass you and pull at you and then corner you and then rape you. And so you're not going to get away from something that you struggle with on the outside just because you go to prison. So then when you find that um, you are using prison to get away from something, it becomes a life option. It becomes something that you can depend on. But at least with prison, you may not be you may not be messed with all the time. It may be just certain times, right? But if you were still living in a house with your mother and her new boyfriend was messing with you, that was a consistent thing that he did all the time. And so then you struggle with that, and it follows you because it's like a monkey on your back. It's a spirit that keeps pulling at you, and it's really demonic, right? It's a demon that keeps pulling at you, and you don't know how to let go of it. You don't know how to leave it alone. And then you begin to engage in activity, the same activity that was done to you. Sometimes it can be predatory, sometimes it can be pedophilia, sometimes it can be homosexual types of relationships, but you begin to engage in what you were exposed to. So then that becomes a life option. Now you are adopting a soul tie towards that. You're not only adopting a soul tie to people's attitudes towards you and how that forms many of your decisions. You are adopting soul ties to the people who hurt you, who bullied you, the people that you had to people please. And so those soul tie connections become dependable and reliable. You know your mother is going to say something stupid. You know your brother is going to say something stupid. You know this romantic partner is going to say something stupid. And all those people who say something stupid end up triggering something in you that makes you run, that an emotional runner. And every time you emotionally run, you end up in prison versus going to get your own place and doing something on your own. You end up back. So then emotional running becomes the life option that you choose. It's the only life option that you feel like you have. And so you choose it and let it guide many of the decisions that you make concerning the people you have to deal with. But when you're thinking about prison as a life option, at some point in your heart, you got to get tired. You got to get tired. You got to, it's something in having to return and go back and forth in a situation that has to make you mad, that has to make you upset, because you can't continue to use it as a dependable, reliable situation unless you are going to be a lifer, unless you're going to be on death row. But if you sit there and you look around and you think about the environment, the people around you, the cage you're sitting in, Instead of trying to survive it, begin to assess it. You're surviving it because you have no other choice but to survive it. But the goal now is to think about it and assess the situation as a way to use it as fuel to overcome it. And overcoming it is not going back and forth. That once you're out, you stay out. That needs to be your life option. So prison as a life option. Prison as friends with benefits, so finding comfort and relief. Again, friends with benefits works the same way as rebounding. You look at it as something that it's a friend to you, and that it gives you benefits. That and you do it in comparison to something outside of prison. You can't get friendship, you can't get benefits from someone outside of prison. Now, friends with benefits is more about sex and companionship and relationship, right? Romantic relationship. That's what the term is usually referred to. But you can still use it in a general sense. Sometimes with friends with benefits could mean that um, you treat the people around you sort of like in a temporary way. There's a friend that you care about and you want to stay friends with, and you want to be friends with, and then there are some friends you could care less about, but you put on this face, this filter, this mask, as if you're going to keep the person. You guys are going to stay together as friends. Well, prison kind of works the same way. Um, you tend to find more comfort and relief once you hit the prison. It's almost like this anxiety you feel when you come out and you are exiting, and you honestly don't know where to take yourself, what to do with yourself, and it's just easier to go back to what you were comfortable with. Um, and that's a very hard decision because that can be anybody. That could be a person who is leaving their parents' home for the first time. That can be a person who exited the shelter, the homeless shelter, for the first time. It can be a person who is leaving college for the first time, person who's making a transition from one job to the next for the first time, and it's that transitional period that is kind of unknown. Don't know what's really going to happen. You do know you have something maybe to lean on that's possibly going to work out for you, like a new job or something like that. But it's but it hasn't started yet. It hasn't gotten to a place where you can truly depend upon it to start, so that you're actually in it. And so the same concept of people who are in between relationships, or the relationship idea, like they really want to be married, but they haven't found somebody to marry. They will pull at someone for benefits, right? And of course, it's still always companionship and sexual benefits. And once they feel like they have met the one, sometimes they keep that friends with benefits person, and or sometimes they let go of that person. But they're really looking for a comforting person. They're looking for someone where men are looking for someone that they can lay their head on their lap, lay the head of lay their head on a woman's lap, really like a trust type of situation. And the friends with benefits is just essentially um, a distraction tool, because they can't find who they really want to be with, but the person that they're trying to be friends with benefits is kind of closer to that. Because if you really wanted to be with that person, I don't think you would run the risk of messing over that relationship under that category, like rebound or friends with benefits or dating rotation. Because if you really wanted that person, you wouldn't want to offend them in that way. You wouldn't want the person to realize that they have been a rebound the whole time, or they have been part of a dating rotation, or they have been friends with benefits the whole time. You only do that to a person that you really don't want to be with. Now you can slip up and fall in love with the person and it turns into more than friends with benefits. But a lot of times I would think from a male perspective, if they really wanted to be with the person, really want they would want to preserve the purity of the relationship. So then they will go and sleep with whomever, but the person that they really want to be with, they'll date and court and not sleep with that person. So then if they still get the satisfaction of having sex with somebody and getting that need met while they court, while they court the person that they will likely end up marrying. So with the friends and benefits, it's some kind of comfort and relief because it could be as a result of a breakup, the need to find comfort and relief in somebody else, like this big sigh that comes out once they have sex with you in orgasm, or the fact that they were able to meet their goal. The goal was to find a person who could serve as friends with benefits. Okay, they met that goal, so then there's the big sigh, there's the big relief. They got their comfort, and they're gonna prolong their comfort as long as they can until they can't. And so prison as friends with benefits is again, it's always in relationship to something that you're not getting over here in X. So you're using prison as a way to still get that. And it essentially becomes friends with benefits. So we're still in romantic terms, of course, and then we have prison as a situationship. This alone is temporary but necessary. This is really along the lines of a woman really believing that the man that she is with is and that relationship is actually going to turn into a long-term relationship leading to marriage. So she will compromise and and accept the situationship because she's living in a fantasy and aspiration, thinking that it's actually going to convert and turn into something else. Then when men go back and forth into prison, it's like a situationship. This is really the men who always go back and forth. It's temporary for them because people like myself, if I got to prison, I would be there forever. Not because I wanted to be, but I'm usually the type of person who would be kind of like a model type person, and they wouldn't let me out. I would have to spend my whole time there. They like the reckless, aggressive, violent, no true home training in their past, who go out, maybe stay for a good month and then come right back in. They want that person. Prisons love that person. And so the situationship, when you're thinking about it from temporary but necessary, is one of those things that men will move in with a woman, knowing good and well that he's not going to stay. One day she's going to come home and all his bags are packed and he's already left. So they will compromise the situation, compromise the woman, move in, get what they need for however long the woman will allow, and then leave out. They never had any intention of staying. So you got some people who go back and forth. They go back and forth because they know it's going to be like a temporary type situation, um, and it's necessary in that moment, in that season. It's like, don't you know that if you drink and drive, um, you're going to go to jail? You're going to get a ticket and go to jail. Why do you want to go to jail? Why would you? Going to jail really gets in the way of anything you're trying to accomplish. But it's temporary for whatever reason you're using it for temporary. It could be a situation where a person is using it to get out of the house. There's maybe some danger in the house, and they'll do something so that they can go to jail. You have a lot of homeless people who would do something just to go to jail because then it takes them off the street for like 24 to 70, 48 to 72 hours. They can get a shower, they can get some food, and then they're released. Okay, well, prison for certain people is like that. They go back and forth. It's like the person who goes who shelter hops from one shelter to the next. They stay in the shelter for a month, right? And then they have to go, and then they find another shelter that's for 3 months, and then they have to go, and then they might find another shelter for 6 months, right? Depending upon the program, and then they have to go. They keep going back and back around in this circle because it works like a situationship. They get their needs met, whatever needs they need to meet, and it's usually just a place to lay their head without violence. They need a place to sleep. They need a place to get some food because they run out of whatever money that they were getting. And so if they go to jail, if they go to prison, they can get a shower. They can get some food. They can probably get some new clothes. That's why a lot of people go into shelters too, who come in and out. Not the people who really need the shelter, but the people who go in and out because they need some water. They need some food. When I was in the shelter, I was at Salvation Army for less than 6 months, and there were some men who were sitting out on the median. It was grass, and and it was hot. It was real hot. They would lay out, and I found out that they got a disability check and everything, but they didn't go get a place, even a motel, and they were just sitting out. And then when they needed some water, they went into or used the restroom. They went into the shelter, drank from the fountain, the water fountain, used the restroom, uh, maybe washed their hands, and returned to the median. They returned to outside, sitting down on the median. They did not go and pursue a job or anything like that. On Friday, they would go to the liquor store because I saw them do that too. They'd go to the liquor store, drink them something, probably be sleep or something like that, and then they do it all over again. And so sometimes people are just looking for a temporary solution to their current problem, but they're not going to really use it to find a better solution. They're just moving from thing to thing. They're just shelter hopping. They're just using the prison as something temporary until even think they're trying to do anything better. I just think they're just using it as a temporary band-aid. It's strange. Strange. So, prison as a decorated cage, accepting false ownership and freedom. One of the things that I note in a lot of my homeless recovery videos is this idea that I didn't want to decorate my part of the room. So it was a four-bed room when I was at the Salvation Army, and I was at the back, I think, off to the left. And I noticed that some of the women who were in the room, at least one or two of them, they decorated it. They actually had um, pictures on the wall, and I'm not talking about pictures of people. They had like pictures on the wall, and they decorate, and they had bedding and pillows and all that kind of stuff. And I said to myself, I'm not going to decorate this. What amounts to a cage? I'm not going to decorate it. No, I kept the bedding that they gave me, but I knew that that place was going to be temporary, and I knew that I was not going to return. I did have sort of like a minor setback because of a situation with an ex who's now an ex, and then I ended up having to stay maybe like 3 weeks um, at Dallas Life. But then after that, I have not had to go back to the shelter, not once. And from 2013 till about 2022, I stayed in an extended stay, and I didn't necessarily decorate it, but I knew I needed to put down some roots in order to pursue financial stability. So I did kind of make it somewhat a home. I mean, not home, but a place that's of peace or something like that. But once I knew that I was going to move to my own apartment, and that's where I am now, 2022. From 2022, I knew. that I was that I could decorate where I am now, and I have truly decorated my place in peace and in freedom. So then, when you're decorating a cage, that's accepting false ownership as if you have rights to that cage. Because if they want to do a shakedown, do a search or something like that, they're going to toss everything you got in that cage. Sometimes in the trash can, but definitely on the floor, for which you're going to have to now pick up that stuff and um, um, fix it back, right? And so it's a false ownership and freedom as if you have the right to decorate that. Even when you are living in a motel, you can't take the furniture out. You have to accept the furniture that's already in the motel. You can't tell them, I don't want the sheets in here. I don't want the covers. You can keep them. I'm going to buy my own covers and sheets. You can't do that. You can't take the towels out. The towels belong to the property. So the desk and the chair, you can't tell them to take it out because it's um, um, taking up too much room in the room, right? You can't take out the refrigerator. All the different stuff. That place is not yours. When it got to the point where it was getting time for me to leave, and it was getting kind of strained around there with the person who was the manager, uh, the, the the attitude that broke the camel's back was when the manager told me, after all the years I had been staying there, and he was just mad at me. After all the years I had been staying there, that I couldn't have my window open and the window air conditioning unit on all the years. But he decided to provoke me all those years I had been there, and I had my window open just slightly, and that was just to get air in there. Because I didn't want to leave the door open because I didn't want someone to bomb rush me and try to rape me or something like that. So I kept the window open, but I'm the kind of person I have to have the air conditioning on, and it wasn't central air; it was a window unit. So it's not like it's really pulling from a central AC, like if you have the window open in the air and it affects the light bill. It really wasn't like that. It was just the window unit. And that was the straw that broke the camel's back, and I knew it was time to go. Because I should be able, if I'm paying rent, wherever I'm paying rent, I should be able to run the air the way I want to run the air, unless it is central air and you're living in a house. If you're living in a house with somebody and you're not on the lease, you're not on the deed, the house deed, then you don't have rights. You only have the rights that you have in the room that you're in, and the bathroom that you use, and maybe the kitchen that you use based upon the rent you're paying. That's it. When you walk around your parents' house acting like you are running the place, that's false ownership and freedom because the person can kick you out. When you live with somebody and you sleep on their couch because you are in transition, you're considered homeless. You're homeless. Just because they let you live with them does not mean that they cannot also kick you out. You have to be on the lease. That's where you actually have some kind of ownership in the situation. You don't own the property, but you have some form of ownership and freedom. But when you decorate a cage thinking, hey man, don't touch my stuff, or when the guards come in and they do a sweep or something like that, you don't own that cage. You have no ownership in that cage. So why decorate it? I think some things are good for you to do in terms of your mental state. It may help to put a put a flower up, a picture of kids or something like that. And it's definitely helpful to keep it clean in there, right? But you also have to remember you don't own that place. That is not your place. And so definitely don't decorate it. When you come out and you go to a halfway house, you don't own that room. You're there for a season. When you come out and you have to live with a family member, you don't own that place. You're there for a season. Have a plan of exit, because the longer you decorate it, the longer you believe you have rights to it, and you don't have rights to it. You can be moved from one unit in a prison to another unit just by will alone. At any time, they could decide to move you. So when you're thinking about decorating the cage, don't prison as a decorated cage. You remember every time you go back and forth, you remember how you decorated it before, and then you increase how you decorate it while you in. And so then you have to gather up all that stuff because you're not going to put it in trash. You gather all that stuff and then you take it with you where you're going, like in this little netted bag, and then you spill it out, and then you put it on the new wall that you have, but you don't put it in your new place. And so I want you to get out of that mentality of decorating cages, because even the person's house that you're living in for the moment is still a decorated cage. Prison as a vow of fidelity and obedience, meaning that you expect nothing of yourself. I expect nothing of myself. So that means I'm not going to be loyal to myself. I'm not going to obey myself. I'm only going to vow to obey the prison, because that's what I understand. Because if you have to go back and forth, that means you don't even respect your own standards, meaning also that you haven't set standards. um, if you take the time to think about what is important to you and the standards and the boundaries that you need to set, you would be less likely to keep going back and forth. I'm not saying you wouldn't go back one or two times, but you wouldn't keep going back and forth. There are people, there are people who have gone to prison just once in their life and have never returned. They have never returned. So they are doing something. They have adopted a mentality or an understanding about prison is not the place that I want to be. It is not the plan that I had for myself. Yeah, whether or not I had enough plans, it doesn't matter. I definitely did not have a plan to go to prison. No one ever thinks that they're going to go to prison. They think that if they commit this act, that it's an act, and people do understand consequences, but they never equate the consequences or consider prison as part of that consequence. That's why you have a lot of these young teenagers who are being tried for murder, tried for all different types of crimes, are shocked when the judge sentences them to 20 years, 25 years, 30, life. They're shocked. And I'm thinking to myself, now you know you killed somebody, right? Why would you be shocked that you are going to jail, right? Or you going to prison? That's why in the interrogation room, you have these teenagers and the parents come in and try to get them to tell the truth, and then they tell the truth, and then they say to the parent, "Okay, can you take me home now? Can we go home now?" You're not going home. You're being arrested. You're being arrested. You're going to be fingerprinted. You're going to jail, things like that. That's why a lot of the consequences that you dole out to kids, they need to be much harsher so that they get a real clue that this act right here that you did is connected to this major consequence that could happen to you. Now, a lot of times you see this in juvenile and youth crimes, and they go in and they go to juvenile, and you're hoping against hope that when they come out, they won't do it again. They just do it again. Maybe the consequence wasn't hard enough. I also think that people get used to punishment. That punishment doesn't mean anything. It can be harsh punishment. It can be a beating, and people get up, feel like they survived it, uh, let out a big sigh, and then they wait for the next go round, whatever that is, right? It's kind of like a boxer ring. It's kind of like you waiting for the next um, opportunity, opportunity to be able to show your might or something like that. Well, prison as a vow of fidelity and obedience is just people fighting for prison more than they are fighting for themselves. They're fighting for prison. The prison has been the most reliable caregiver in that person's life, in that person who goes back and forth. So then, if I know that I can go to prison and get what I need, food, clothing, shelter, as a caregiver for me, then I'm going to owe fidelity and obedience to them. Sometimes it may make me mad. Sometimes a CO may make me mad or something like that. But at the end of the day, they're good to me. I'm learning something in prison, or I get what I need in prison. I can depend on my dog over here. I can depend on the CO. Sometimes the CO lets me have extra food. Sometimes my friend over here who is assigned to do child, he gives me an extra meat. He gives me extra. Whatever the extra is, he gives me extra. So then they're being loyal to me, then I'm going to be loyal to them. And that's how people see um, their role with the prison, that it's part of this fidelity that they need to have towards the prison system, that is really tearing them down. It's not actually building them up. They're not really learning anything. All they're learning is to obey within that system. They're not learning how to obey outside of the system. And if they learn how to obey outside of the system, they may fare better, because the CO just becomes a police officer. The wardens just become the supervisor on the job. The friends within the jail or the prison just become co-workers or family members or whatever. That the system that they're trying to have fidelity and obedience to is the same system that they can have fidelity and obedience to in freedom. You should expect something of yourself. You should expect something of yourself, that you have a right to live freely, that you have a right to advocate for yourself. You have a right to set boundaries with people. You have a right to believe in yourself, to take a class, to think about your business, to not go back. You have a right to that. But if you take your obedience and move it to a prison system, you will always live in obedience to it, and not in obedience to you, or obedience to God, or obedience to a boss, which would actually change the compliance, right? And so people are willing to obey, but within the wrong system. Prison as a union and or marriage. Prison is my wife, my confidant, and my rib. This is a hard one, because you can either start out with this type of thinking, or you can end up with this type of thinking. I mean, I don't know if it's a time, if we need to attach a time frame to it. I don't think anyone who goes into prison for the first time thinks that prison is a union or a marriage. But I do think on some level that after you have gone back and forth multiple times, that it must be a marriage to you. It must be your wife. It must be your confidant. It must be your rib. And rib goes back to um, the biblical story of Adam and Eve. But when you look at prison and you go back and forth to it, and you refuse on some level to stay outside of prison, you have become union with it. Even if you don't want to see it from the context of marriage, the word marriage, you have become union to it. That you both are unified. There's a scripture in the Bible, Amos 3:3. Can two walk together unless they agree? If you are returning to prison multiple times, then you are in agreement with it. You have become unified to it. You have become, it is your confidant. It is something that you trust um, and believe that works for you, and that it is your real, that it works, that is something on the side of you that you keep close to your heart. And can you have fond memories of being in prison? Some things, some days going good for you. Sure, I'm not going to knock that. I'm not going to knock that in the sense that you are wrong to think like that. No, you can have some fond memories. You can have some ideals about prison that you feel were good for you and that help you to manage your life and learn things that you didn't get a chance to learn when you were living in your parents' house or caregiver. It's funny how you learn how to wash dishes and manage and clean and all that kind of stuff, and you learn it in prison when you didn't learn it in your house. Uh, Oftentimes they may have some financial classes. Sometimes they definitely have um, grief counseling type classes, right? How to overcome your anger. Whereas you had the opportunity to learn it in your house, but the parent or caregiver did not provide the opportunity because the parent or caregiver had anger issues himself or herself. So they couldn't give out the wisdom, dole out the wisdom necessary for you to reflect changed type behavior because they didn't change their behavior. So what they did affected you, had an impact upon you, contributed to your life, left a legacy that you now not only have to bear their burdens, but bear your own. But when you look at prison as a union, you're unified. You agree with the prison system if you continue to go back and forth into it. I got to say that again. You agree with the prison system and all that it reflects if you go back and forth into it. Because lack of agreement would be reflected in you staying out of it and coming into society and adopting a life plan that will help you to stay out of it. But if you go back and forth, that means you believe it. You believe in it, you agree with it, you support it, you obey it, you comply with it. Um, it is your ride or die, right? That terminology that's also connected to romance is that ride or die. You can ride or die, or prison will ride or die for you. And so then, if prison will ride or die for you and be there for you whenever you need it, then you're going to ride or die for prison and be there for whenever they need it. They need you. Because going back to that previous slide, you believe you need prison and you believe prison needs you. Otherwise, you wouldn't go back and forth. So this idea about union and or marriage is something that I want you to think about because it also reminds me of shacking. When you shack with someone without marriage. And union works like that because you have some people who are called their relationship with someone a union versus an actual marriage. When in reality, they're just shacking. And shacking, you can get very comfortable in shacking. It can seem like it is the life plan that you've been dreaming of and that it is working and you're both together and you eat and sleep and learn whatever you can learn within that context. And it can go on for 10, 15, 20 years. But then that person who is shacking with you, a lot of times it's a man and a woman. The man will shack with a woman for 10, 15 years, leave that situation because the woman uh, realizes he's never going to marry her, turn around and go get into another situation and marry another woman, marry someone in 7 months. So they really didn't want to be with the person that they were with. They didn't really want to be with that person. But they put up with it for however long that they could put up with it until they hit a brick wall or until the decision to exit was made on their behalf, i.e., someone kicked them out. So the prison as a union and a marriage is a false sense of marriage. It's a false sense of it's shacking at the end of the day. And you're basically waiting until the right person comes along. But for this situation, shacking is the right person. So it's in the reverse order, it's in a disorder. Instead of working things out with the main partner on the outside, the person who goes back and forth into prison is looking at the unionization of prison as the true marital partner, as the true parent to marry, because they'll give 10, 15, 20, 25 years, 30 years to prison. That's a marriage. That's a job, really, right? You can retire after 25 years. That's a marriage. And they'll give all that time, give all their good years, give all their good mind and good body and good heart to that prison that they're married to versus the person on the outside that they could give that to, their good heart, their good mind, their good body, their finances, their investment, everything. So they would rather be married to prison than they would rather be married to the person, because once they get out, this is the person who keeps going in and out. Once they get out, they do all they can to mess up the situation that they're in with the person, with whether that person is just a life partner, a union, or marital partner. They do all they can to mess up that situation just so they can return to their true partner, which is the marital partner, which is the union. So I don't know. I just such an interesting subtopic. So then the solution to the problem would be, in all these cases, if you take them individually or collectively, choose life. And so there's a scripture in the Bible, Deuteronomy 30:19. I call heaven and earth to record this day against you, that I have set before you life and death, blessing and cursing. Therefore choose life, that both thou and thy seed may live. May live. How do you choose life? I'm going to get into different ways that you choose life, the strategies. But one of the things that you need to think about is that life, that being in the prison is death. Even if you are walking around, breathing, using your mind, surviving, talking to people, having conversations, getting feedback, anything that you're doing is going to look like it's life, because life is in you, right? Um, but in reality, that path is death. That path. All of you, if you really look out from your prison cell, you look out at everybody just walking about, whether it's within the prison or in the rec yard, look at them individually as death. That death is walking down the hall. Death is eating chow. Death is walking towards the rec yard. Death is two people fighting. Death is um, getting mad at the CO. That's death. Those are all deaths. Those are all reflective of death. And even if you manage to stay alive in that situation, you are staying alive for death reasons. Now, what does that say about the people who have to be there for 25 years or life? Their time clock of death has already started. As soon as they were sentenced and had to be in handcuffs and walk to the prison, their time clock of death. So now they have to live with the anxiety, the stress, the worry. And it's not to get out, it's the hope that comes with that particular position that they took, that there's this hope that they could get out, or they hope to get out, but they're never going to get out. So it's death. And people might argue me down about that, concerning calling it death, because then you're sort of criticizing the situation, or I'm sort of criticizing the situation and not having any hope for anybody. But the people who are going back and forth are essentially going back and forth into a graveyard. They might as well dig a ditch, dig a graveyard plot, put themselves in it, which is the prison, and then take the same shovel, try to dig themselves out of it, get up, go into life for a minute, and then have troubles in life and don't want to take on the responsibilities of life, and return to the ditch, go ahead and dig it again. A lot of times you don't even have to dig it, it's still open for you. It's still open for you through the words of people who say, "Oh man, you'll be back," or the mocking of the CEO or the warden, or you can see it in their hearts that they know you're going to be back, right? You can see it in people and your family and how they treat you, and man, you just like this or you just like that, man. Man, You need to stay out of prison. At the same time, they're creating a situation where you may have to go back into prison. That they're contributing to it. They're provoking you to anger, right? They're not willing to help. They take on the responsibility of help, or they're saying that, but they're not really going to do it. So a lot of times it may be better for people who are getting out of prison to go the halfway house route instead of going straight to the family. Straight to the family is going to put a lot of pressures. It's going to put a lot of, it's going to have some anger with it. It's going to have some insecurity and embarrassment because the first thing you're waiting on is when the next shoe is going to drop. When is someone in the house going to say you got to leave? Because that's what you're used to. You're always used to someone saying that you got to leave. That's why you end up homeless. That's why you end up doing something to go into prison because you need somewhere to live. Well, you have to have life as an understanding, as a mindset before you can choose somewhere to live. Because you can live in the you can actually reside in an apartment but don't live there. Your heart doesn't live there. You don't want to stay there. That's why you got people just in general who hop from place to place. They don't have to have they don't have to have gone to prison. They don't even have to have had a previous stint with homelessness. They can just be the types of people who move from place to place to place. My mother's cousin used to do that. I mean, it just seemed like every so often she was always moving from one apartment to the next apartment. I don't get it myself because I can't stand the move. Once I'm somewhere, I like to stay there for a while. Same thing with a job. But choosing life is always going to be a decision that you have to make. I set before you life and death, blessing and cursing. Therefore, choose life. That's a decision that you have to make. Every day you leave your house, every day you put on clothes, every day you get on a bus, every day you drive your car, every day you go into the grocery store, every day you go to pay taxes, do whatever, whatever it is, you're choosing life. You're choosing life in this situation. When you are confronted with a decision to have a fight versus not have a fight, knowing that if you have a fight, it may result in you being arrested and going to jail, right? You have to choose in that moment. I cannot have a fight. I cannot do this. If I do this, I'm going to go to jail. I'm going to go to jail. So when you are thinking about this in terms of choosing life, when you're confronted with this choice of whether or not to choose life or death, think about the people who are going to come behind you. Think about the people who are watching you. A lot of times people make decisions based upon their own individual perspective, but they don't think about the community, the collective group of people who are going to come after them. They don't think about the kids who are watching them. They don't think about the women who are watching them. They don't think about the parents. They make decisions in a vacuum. They make decisions like no one else exists in the world. And that's really wrong to do that because you are not just one person in this world. You do have an obligation to yourself, but you also have an obligation to the people around you so that you don't create situations where they feel unsafe, where they feel like they have to walk on eggshells with you. Sure, someone has done you wrong. That's why you feel like you need to go back and forth into prison for some reason uh, uh, that's related to that. But you don't have the right to impose upon somebody else's free will to choose life just because you don't want to live life outside of the prison. So I just think about that a lot of times when people are making decisions and they think they are making decisions just for themselves and I'm just going to look out for myself. I'm not going to worry about anybody else. That is a very selfish thing to do because your decisions that you make, they affect everything. They affect everybody. Like I said in the previous slide, the the um the prison system does need you. They need you for data and statistics, investments, money, finances, government funding. Every time you go back and forth, they get more money on your head. So when you're thinking about choosing life, think about that as a decision to choose life and to stand by that decision. So here's a way that you can think about how to choose life by creating a future statement. And you ask yourself this question: where do I want to take myself out of prison? If you ask this question, even if it's aspirational, even if it's fantastical, a fantasy, even if it seems like it might be out of reach, ask it. It's the same thing I say to my students when I teach college English, and I tell students that you got so much education all the way up to the 12th grade and then graduation. So now you got to look at yourself. Where do you want to take yourself? Where do you want to take your head? Do you want to go to vocational school? Do you want to go to college? Do you want to go to the workforce? Do you want to go into the service? Do you want to have your own business? Whatever strategy you take for each of those options, you're still going to have to get some kind of education. You're still going to have to sit down and become a student of something so that you can advance yourself. Uh, because just because you say, well, college is not for me, does not mean that you cannot pick up a book and read it. You can still pick up a book and read something. You can always read something on finances, how to manage your finances. You can always read something on how to do a business. You can always read something on um, on wanting to become married, becoming a parent or something. You could. There's always opportunities for you to learn. So that means that you just have to figure out where do you want to take yourself out of prison. Out of prison is the key phrase, because whatever decision you adopt in terms of the future statement you create is going to have to be one that's going to be out of prison, unless your ministry or assignment in life assignment, is going to take you back to prison to help other people. Then that's different. Either way, it's still taking you, is where do you want to take yourself out of prison? Create a life vision statement. So everyone needs a vision statement. I need a vision for myself outside of prison. So the vision, when you think about vision statements versus a mission statement, vision statement is the preferred way you want people to perceive your product and you as a brand. The mission statement is all the individual missions for each of your products or departments or smaller brands. So if you look at McDonald's, right? McDonald's wants to be the preferred burger for customers, right, all over the world. So then their mission statement would be for to ensure that happens at individual restaurant outlets. That you are setting and supporting the larger brand as an individual franchisee. You are setting and supporting the brand to ensure that McDonald's as a larger organization meets that vision statement. So then your vision statement is your vision statement could be, I want to be um, financially stable, right? All the way up to my retirement years and over. Okay, I want to be. Well, let's see. I want to be financially well. So that means you believe you are financially sick right now. That's what well would imply. So my vision is to be financially well. So then your mission statement would be, I need to pursue financial stability. Coming out of prison, the first thing I need to do is work on a job. If I already have a place to live, someone has opened up their doors to let me come live with them. Okay, I need to work on a job. Whatever the job is, I need to work on it. Whether I'm going to have my own little business where I have a truck and a lawnmower and I go to places and I do lawn work, I can do that. I could do a delivery, I could do CDL, I can do a number of things, right? But the first thing is to get the job so that I can pursue financial stability. Financial stability in this case is just making sure that you work to get a paycheck every month. You set a goal of 1 year, right, to get it done, and and you stay on that job for 1 year. Now, if it's time to get another place where you have your own place, that's fine. But if it's not, and you can pay rent at where you are and it's workable, then stay there, right? And so you stay there for 1 year, you keep the job, and then you reassess each year. So every time you look at what you pulled in, You've been able to maintain, stay out of prison, stay out of everything, right? And then now, can you stay on that job for another year? Stay on that job for another year if it's workable. Then that's 2 years you are collecting, um, in terms of supporting your larger vision statement, which is to become financially well. So year one, you are pursuing uh, financially financial stability. Year two, you are sustaining financial stability. Year three is rinse, repeat, right? Wash, rinse, repeat. Just continue. And so then you look at the 5 years that you have been pursuing financial stability as mission as a mission statement that is leading or supporting the larger vision statement. So create a life vision statement. And a lot of times the life vision statement really has a lot to do with finances. And honestly, that's really for everybody. A SWOT statement. So SWOT is a business term, and it is the acronym for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. And then you want to look at gaps in your understanding. One of the major gaps in your understanding is always going to be the fact that you've been in prison for for many many years, and so you don't have a house, you don't have clothes, you don't have food, you don't have a sustainable way of making sure that uh, you meet your needs you meet your needs. And so then the gaps in your understanding is always going to be financial. It could also mean that you did not learn how to stay with something for a long time. To you, your gaps in understanding could be about patience, lack of patience, getting into something too quickly, hastiness, right? That could be a gap in your and the gap is that everything takes time, and just because you may be in a hurry doesn't mean that the situation is going to respond to you just because you're in a hurry. Some things just take time. If you are cooking a cake, the outside of the cake is going to look like it's done. It's going to brown quicker than the inside. But if you take a fork and you stick it in the middle of the cake, you're going to realize it's not done. That's the same thing with your life. There are some decisions that require that you can get immediate gratification without major consequence, and then there are some decisions that are just going to take time. That's just what it is. If you're going to take a class usually for college work is going to be 16 weeks, a course. For vocational work, it depends on the semester. It depends on the year. It depends on the program, right? But a lot of times, core classes within an post high school environment will always be 8, 10, 13, 16 weeks, right? So then you start it off, you set the goal to complete the class at the beginning of the semester. And then every step along the way, you are doing everything you need to do to get to the end of the goal, which is completion. And then, of course, you need to set the goal to pass the class. Passing is always at 70. But if you want to achieve higher than that, then you set a goal for 80, 90, right? And so that could be the gaps in your understanding that uh, the reason why you keep going back and forth is because you keep getting impatient with whatever process you are enduring in that time. So then now look at your strengths. What are you really good at? It can be something academic. It can be something, a gift. It can be anything. What are your strengths? So if you write well, if you like math, if you're a great communicator, you are a great storyteller, you have a way of telling something, explaining something, or you always like history, you can read something quickly and then be able to explain it. Whatever it is, you may be great at cars, you may be great at reading people, that could be your strength. So then your weaknesses is going to be anything you've struggled with. A weakness for a person who keeps going back and forth into prison is the fact that he keeps going back and forth into prison and that he thinks prison is the right environment for him to sustain himself as a person. But the weakness truly is that he doesn't have an adult mentality about life. So then the opportunity is going to be to resolve any weakness that you have. And And in this case, if you're struggling with adulthood and you don't know how to be an adult, then that's going to be the opportunity to resolve that weakness. Then threats are always you, your thinking, your mindset. Threats are not always as external as we like to believe them to be. Nobody makes you do anything. You still have a free will choice to make whatever decision you are making, to decide whatever it is you are deciding. So then, if you know that you are the biggest threat to yourself, you need to begin looking at yourself, thinking about who you are as an individual and who you want to become going forward. So create a SWOT statement. Create a life plan statement. I need a plan to remain out of prison. One is a vision statement. This is an actual life plan. So that means I need to have the first 5 years in mind. The first 5 years, first year coming out, second year, third year, fourth year, fifth year. I need to have the first 5 years out of prison. I need to adopt that as a life plan statement. I need to remain out of prison for the first 5 years of my time out of prison. That's a standard that you're setting for yourself. That you create a core value. I need to develop a work ethic. I need to move the work ethic that I created in prison and supporting the prison and move it to the outside so that I can support a business. I don't need to have an attitude about having to work at a company and working for the man. Leave those ideologies and political thinking, put those on the shelf until you stabilize yourself. You can still have that thinking and then work in the community to bring about change. But when you are first coming out of something, you don't need that type of thinking. It's a distraction. You need a life plan that will help you to remain out of prison. Not go back and forth, not go back and test the waters, not go back and say that, I did better while I was in prison than when I'm out. That's the children of Israel talk. They act like they kept saying to Moses that they were better off in Egypt than they were in their process towards the promised land. They just kept repeating that over and over and over again. And so they believed on some level that Egypt needed them more than Moses and God needed them to go into the promised land. Egypt needed them. Even though Egypt was bad to them, hurt them, did not respect them or anything like that, they felt like Egypt was much more of a friend and companion to them than this person called Moses. So I need a plan to remain out of prison. Think about it in terms of the first 5 years and break it down in 1 year increments if you have to do that. But your goal, your life plan goal, is to stay out of prison the first 5 years. Create a life job statement. So I need a sustainable job for at least 1 to 2 years and then assess that third year out of prison. And a lot of times we don't always like the first job we get, or the first job is not paying enough. We like to live in this understanding that we got all these options in the world to get the best type of job that we want. And we got all these options in the world to get the best type of job that's going to pay me what I'm worth. That hardly ever happens. What happens is you need a job to make sure that you can sustain yourself as an adult. If the job pays food, clothes, and shelter and gives you just a little bit of money left over, then that's the job for you until you can get some schooling and do better. When I was coming out of homelessness and 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 I finally left the shelter and I was able to move into an extended stay is under the Motel 6 line, Studio 6. And I was able to get more than the minimum classes. Well, no, the minimum classes for adjunct teaching was three, and at first I only had one, then two, and then it moved up to three. And once I got three, and I had already set the goal to pursue financial stability uh, right when I was in the shelter. That was the goal. I did not try to get all mixed up into stuff. There was a situation where I got mixed up with a guy because I thought he was the one, but that turned out not to be true, and we broke up. And then I got back on track, and I stayed on track after that. So that was from 2013 to 2022, and the goal was to stay on a job. Um, the goal was to pursue financial stability. So that meant I needed to stay on the job, don't quit. I needed to stay on that job for however long I needed to pursue financial stability and pay bills off that job. And that job paid all of my main bills. I had a little bit left over to buy a few clothing items. I was able to buy food, all that kind of stuff. And so that happened from 2013 to 2022. I was called back from the pandemic to teach temporary full time, and so that money helped me to move into an apartment, and so that was more money, more classes, and so now I'm able to sustain myself. But it began with the goal, the job, the life. It was the same thing I would tell people who would complain about the job that they were going to quit and all that kind of stuff. I said, don't quit, stay in the system, because once you get out of the system, it's hard to get back in. And so, of course, people quit, right? Because people go by their emotions, not understanding how important it is to keep something. You are an adult. So when you're first getting out, the life job statement should be: I need a sustainable job for at least 1 to 2 years, and then assess at the third. So if the job is not working in your third year, then you can plan your transition, but don't up and quit the job. All right, create a financial stability statement. So I need to pursue financial stability and be financially stable outside of prison. Pursuing any criminal activity like drug dealing and things like that, that is not financially, uh, that's not financial stability. It looks like you got a lot of money, but it's really going to burn in your pocket. You never keep that money, whether someone targets you, whether you lose it, whether you spend overspend it, it doesn't matter. Somehow money that you get through ill-gotten gain, you never keep. And the best way to know that is because you end up being arrested, and then they end up seizing the money, and you never keep it then. Okay, you could be robbed, you could be murdered, you can be a number of things can happen to you. But if you pursue financial stability, you need to appreciate a paycheck. People don't appreciate a paycheck. They think it's, well, it's working under the system. It's the plantation system. It's the slave plantation system. It's working for the man, working for the white man, working for this, da, da, da. It's a job. You are an adult, and it's a job. That's all that matters. It's a job. And so you people need to have much more regard for a paycheck. You can always change your perspective and plan for the transition of you having your own business, and then after that you don't have to have a paycheck. But the very irony is that you'll go out and have your own business and then turn around and have to pay a paycheck to somebody and then complain that they don't have regard for a paycheck. When you didn't have regard for a paycheck, have respect for a paycheck, have respect for a job. It gives you transition time, it gives you transition planning time. Use the job to fund your dream. Regardless, it's going to take time. It's going to take, whatever you're trying to do is going to take time. It's no different than a baby. You birth the baby, now you got to take care and nurture the baby. Okay, the baby will become a toddler after so much time, and the baby can walk on his own, but you're still having to watch the baby, monitor the baby, feed the baby, change the baby, give the baby a bath, talk to the baby, read to the baby. Okay, that's going to take at least up to 5 years before the baby has to then leave and go to pre-K or to kindergarten or to first grade. So you still have some responsibility with even the dream planning process, and it's going to take about 5 years. So if you keep that in mind, instead of being so turned around by this idea of working on a job, keep the job, use the job to stabilize yourself financially, and use it to fund your dream. So I need to pursue financial stability. That's one. and be financially stable outside of the prison. Anything that you do that's going to be criminal activity is never going to last. It is never, it does not, it's a false sense of financial stability. It is not financial stability just because you have stacks of money. That's why people oftentimes will transition from drug running to trying to get into rap, because they understand somewhere subconsciously that the drug running that they're doing is going to be dangerous and you never keep it. But if you get into rap, for example, you can build on a brand, build on a product, sell, go do tours. You have different streams of income. So think about this: create a financial stability statement. Create a shelter statement. I need to keep a place for a year, even if it is an extended stay at a motel. Sometimes it is better to stay at a motel than even to stay with family and friends. When I was going through my situation with homelessness or whatever, and I had to stay with family and friends, it was much more toxic living with them than staying at a motel. So the motel was much more ideal. It was my area, my place in terms of just the immediate environment. I didn't own the motel, of course, but it was mine. And so I think everyone really needs to create a shelter statement. I think when people are graduating from high school and they didn't have any kind of plan, transition plan into something, and now they're kind of floating in the wind, they forget that they are entering adulthood. They don't have any consciousness of entering adulthood. And as long as you're staying in a parent's house, you never really have a true consciousness of adulthood. But when you start thinking about yourself in terms of an adult, not just by age, not just because you turned 18 or you're 21. You are 21 years old living in somebody else's house. That's somebody else's house. So that person can ask you to leave. You stop being on a parent's lease after a certain time. They could choose not to add you to the lease when they renew. So that means if you're not on the lease anymore as an 18-year-old, 19, 20, 21, 22-year-old person, individual, then that means you are homeless. Just because that used to be your room and just because you're still staying in that room doesn't mean you're not homeless. At any time, that parent can ask you to leave. So that means you need to create a shelter statement. You need to sit down with your parents, like in this case with a high school. If a high school student is listening to this, you need to sit down with your parents, tell them what your plan is. Okay, I didn't get into college. I'm going to go and get this job. Can you work with me for the first 2 to 3 years while I give you some rent, and then I save some money? Then I either get into college, community college, take some more class. I mean, take classes, and then by a certain age, I think I can leave somewhere around 22, 23, 24, 25, somewhere around there, right? And so if you give people a plan, people know how to work with a plan, basic, more than you saying, well, I don't know what I want to do. Nobody wants to work with that because you don't have any clue about anything. You know you need to get a job, so go get the job. You know that you need to take classes, so go take classes. But people will be more inclined to help to work with you. So moving from the high school context to just you coming out of prison as an adult now, you're still technically age wise an adult, but you still may be a child in your mindset, a high school student in your mindset. So then you need to get somewhere and sit down. What our big mamas and nanas and mothers and fathers used to say all the time from the baby boomer generation: get somewhere and sit down. Don't move with a woman. It's only going to complicate the situation even more, because then the woman can threaten to kick you out. The woman can threaten to call your parole officer or probation officer. The woman can create more toxic situations for you than even being in prison, because now you're out and free. And people, when they're dealing with you from a vulnerable standpoint, they know that you are vulnerable. They seem to pick and prod at you and provoke you more. It's like they kind of want you to go back to prison, right? They like the visual of you being handcuffed and having to be placed in the cop car, cruiser, and then going to jail, being fingerprinted and things like that. And then they visit you in court and say, "Oh, I love you, baby. I'm going to be with you. I'm going to be, I'm your, be for you. I'm going to be with you when you get out." It's like they're setting you up. That's why it's better that you just keep your own place. And even if you have to move into a motel, and usually the extended stays will have a set rate per month. If you can find something that will give you a set rate per month, because it's going to include the water, the cable, the electricity, the air conditioning, so you won't have to pay all those extra bills, the phone, right? And so if you look at that as an option versus going to go live with a woman. If you have the option to stay at a what is it halfway house and they let you stay there for 6, 7, 8 months, just before you make a transition and you just go get a job and everything, go then do that. But if it gets to a point where the halfway house can be dangerous because not everyone is getting a job, some folks may be pursuing drugs, things like that. If it gets a little dangerous like that, then yeah, maybe you need to go on ahead. But the motel actually is a better bet. A setting boundary statement, so I can no longer frequent environments that will push me back to prison. I need to guard against jealousy. So these are two different types of ideals. The first one is I can't keep putting myself in environments. There have been many videos on YouTube where a best friend or so-called best friend will set up another friend uh, to be uh, uh, to be attacked, and then the other person is killed. A lot of this stuff has been going on where people are kind of setting you up to fail, and it's much more blatant now. It's not something that is more that used to be passive aggressive. That they are seeking you out to target you to provoke uh, to either die or go back to prison. And so any environment that's going to contribute, and you know what those environments are, you were in a lot of those environments right before you went to jail, right before you went to prison. So go back in your mind, in the recesses of your mind, and think about all those environments that contributed to you going to prison for the first and second and third and fourth and fifth time. If you got family members who who just have decided not to change, and they're going to continue to do everything that they're going to do, and they're trying to still bring you along with them, okay, it's time to cut them loose, even if they're family. It doesn't matter who the person is. I don't care. I don't care. I got a cousin. We were best cousins as youngins, but she would get me into too much stuff. It wasn't violence, but it was sexual activity. And I wasn't having sex, but she was having sex. But she would create opportunities where we somehow boys would come to the house. Okay. And so she would get me into too much stuff. Now she's gone on to college and things like that. She's a lot different than what she used to be. But at the heart of her, when it comes to me, it seemed like she felt like she needed to get me into something so that it destroyed me, and she stood by and watched it happen. It's like the person who starts a fire on purpose. They start a fire on purpose, and then they stand back and look at it consume itself, or consume whatever it is it's consuming, and then die out. Those are those types of people and environments that I'm talking about, that they want to see you arrested. They want to see you taken down by the police. They want to see you shot by the police. They want to see you taken in handcuffs and placed in the cop car, just so they can say, "I got you, man. I got you, man. That's my homie right there. Man, I got you." When they don't have you, because if they had you, they wouldn't have put you in that kind of position to for that to happen. They want that to happen. People set you up. So you can't frequent those environments. You can't. There was a situation I was just looking at on YouTube where the guy was in some kind of activity. The girl was a caregiver. They had about one or two kids. They were married, I think. And something happened with, I guess, a person who was targeting him for attack. He came and shot him and the girl, left the kids there. But there was a guy who was a mobile barber, and the one doing the drug running asked him, could he come and cut his hair and everything. Well, he got caught up in the mix, and so he ended up being killed too. And so sometimes the environments that you believe worked for you back then do not work for you today. It's too volatile. It's too hasty. It's too reckless. People are committing violence just for the sport of it, just so they can see it go. You have all these people who are filming fights on camera when they can actually stop the situation by putting down the camera and coming between the two people, but they don't want to do that. They want to be able to create viral moments and put it on YouTube and put it on TikTok and put it on Twitter, and so they get a bunch of likes, and then maybe other things that are connected to it or whatever, and get some advertiser money. I don't know, but they're not looking to be different from the environment that they're in. So the next thing is to guard against jealousy. Anytime you're trying to reach after something, whether you have gone to prison or not, it doesn't matter. Anytime you're trying to reach after something, you're going to expect jealousy. Jealousy is just another form of hate. And people will hate you to a passion. They will be jealous of you and hate you to a passion, and will contribute to the ending of your life. They will do whatever they have to do to keep you from getting to where you need to get to. So you have to set boundaries in life. Whatever got you in and kept you going back and forth, you can't do that anymore. You have to, it's just like a king who renounces his kingship. I renounce. I'm abdicating the throne. I'm not going to be king in this area anymore. So if you were a kingpin, or you were perceived as king or kingly in a situation where you were a drug runner or doing anything that was criminal behavior and people had respect for you, you're going to have to give up that respect. It's a fake respect in a way, but you're going to have to give it up so that you can have respect for yourself in another area of your life. So I can no longer frequent environments that will push me back to prison. I need to guard against jealousy. A core values statement. So I believe in building a work ethic and developing my skills to get to where I want to be in life outside of prison. So that means you have to have a vision of where you want to be, because you can't apply work ethic and integrity and character and passion, long suffering, patience to as core values until you know. I mean, yeah, as core values to what you want to do until you know what you want to do. So if you're going to build a work ethic, what kind of work ethic, and what is it for? Because you got a lot of people who build a work ethic and still selling drugs, and they've been selling drugs for 20, 25 years, and they've been selling drugs out while they were in prison as well. They're sort of managing their drug business while they're still in prison. So you got folks. It's a fake work ethic because you're not working, but it's they may call it entrepreneurial in a sense of work. So then, how are you going to build a work ethic? How are you going to develop your skills? That means you're going to have to conduct a gap analysis of your skills, where you are compared to where you want to be. So if you're lacking in skill development, then you're going to have to now think about how you're going to obtain skills. Don't be afraid to get a job. Don't be afraid to hustle for what you want in a legal sense. And so then the skills that you develop will be based upon the goal that you set. So then you will tack on core values to sustain um, that particular goal. Create a new belief system. So I need education to create new opportunities outside of prison. There's no way in the world you're going to be able to create a new belief system without getting some form of education. You got to add to your knowledge base. So even if you don't want to go to college, you don't feel like college is a necessary part of you maintaining and sustaining your life, you're going to have to pick up a book and read it. You got billionaires who still pick up a book and read it. Warren Buffett, from what I read and saw in a documentary, that he reads 4 to 6 hours a day, sometimes more, and that's a billionaire. That's a true billionaire. And so, uh, if you're going to create opportunities for yourself outside of prison, you're going to have to pick up a book. It can be an accounting book. It can be a financial book. It can be economics. It can be a book that is connected to what you want to do in life. Regardless, you're going to have to pick up a book. There's no way, because you can't live off the old belief system. There's a scripture in the Bible, I forget what it's called, but it's what the title is, but I'm going to paraphrase it. You cannot uh, pour new wine into old wineskins, because if you do that, it's going to break. So the new wine needs to be poured into new wineskins. Think about wine as knowledge. You cannot pour new knowledge into an old mindset, old way of thinking, old way of strategy. You're going to have to develop a new belief system so that the knowledge you do pour into yourself, it will sustain itself. It will outlast your lifetime. That's what legacy is. And so the only legacy that you're leaving right now for people who are connected to you is that you go in and out of prison. That's how people perceive you. That's how people know you. That's how people understand you. That's the relationship that people have with you. That's the soul tie that they have with you. And that's the soul tie you have with them. You go in and out of prison. So in order for you to stay out of prison, you're going to have to read a book. You're going to have to learn something new. You're going to have to get your CDL license. You can you become a welder. You can go to community college. You can get into the medical field, the healthcare field. You can do a number of things that are of options to you. So create a new belief system. Create a Bible statement. So this Bible statement is based upon Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thy own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy path. So then your soul tie needs to be, you need to create the soul tie that is connected to God and how God sees you, and how he made you. He didn't make you to go to prison back and forth. He didn't make you to go back and forth into death. And so, if you were in prison and you stayed in prison so many years, it is because you don't have a relationship with the Bible, and you don't have a relationship with the Lord. Because if you had a relationship with the Lord, um, whenever you are struggling with the temptation to do something, you're going to use the Bible to call attention to it and to kind of pull you back. So in your new process to stay out of prison, you're going to have to trust God. You're going to have to trust God's guidance. You're going to have to stay on the path that God would have for you. Um, Acknowledge God when you don't understand something. Let God guide and direct you. And you know it to be true, because right before you committed the action that landed you in prison, you felt the warning sign. You felt it in your stomach, in the pit of your stomach, in your head, in your mind. You had people who warned you, man, quit hanging out with that guy. I'm telling you right now, he's just going to lead you down the wrong path. You had people who said that. Different people from different walks of life, from different areas of your life and heart. You had them say something to you, and you ignored the warning. All of that is just warning that God used through the different people to give you a better understanding of your situation. So now you've gone to prison, and now you have to learn that system. Now you're stuck in that system, because now you've given up a great number of years of your life to prison. And so now you come out and you're set back emotionally, mentally, psychologically, spiritually, financially. And so now you got to dig yourself out of that ditch and stay out of it. That's going to take you talking to God, you praying, you repenting for any sin that you created, you caused, you did, and connect this scripture to your setting boundary statement so that you don't repeat exactly the same pattern again. Create a parenting statement. So what this basically means is parent yourself. Do for you what you did not get. Pray for God's guidance. So you may have to become your own parent. As much as you have had issues with your parent or primary caregiver, mother or father or aunt or nana, big mama, you still have some childhood wounds. And going back and forth into prison, a lot of times it's fueled by this, by those childhood wounds that you had that were never resolved. No one came to you and talked to you about it. They just let you be who you are, right? They didn't have any care or concern to say, hey, let's do something different. Basically, for some people, if you're bringing in money, that's all that matters. We'll take that. So if you want to continue to stay and do drugs, you do that. Just make sure you pay the rent. That type of thing, right? You have a lot of that. You have that a lot with mothers, with fathers. Like with mothers, they don't mind the daughter stripping, even though they'll criticize the daughter. But if the daughter is bringing in rent money, $600, they don't care anything about her stripping, right? If the son for the mother is bringing home some cash and give her something or whatever, she's fine with it. Never mind that you are co-signing that the mother is co-signing the destruction of her own child in doing that, right? And so a lot of times people put things on a money level. They'll stick things out with you as long as you give them money. Well, if you had any exposure to a parent who was not the kind of parent that they should have been, the person should have been, then you're gonna have to parent yourself. That means when I say you need to look for your basics and sustain yourself with the basics, keep a job, pay for food, clothing, shelter, because that's what the prison is doing. Then you're gonna have to parent yourself. If your parent moved you from place to place to place, then you're gonna have to create a life statement where you stay in one place. Make sure it's a good place, of course, where you stay in one place. If your parent always had to go get a payday loan, sold a car, you guys lived in a car or something like that, then your parenting yourself is going to be, I don't want to do that. I'm going to make sure that I keep a car, don't have to get the payday loan, keep a place. If your parent always needed to ask you for money, they never had any money, then you're gonna have to parent yourself and say, I need to be a better steward over the money that I do get from my job or any other type of hustle. So I need to put back $100 out of my paycheck every time, right? Um, if you had a parent who didn't show you love, showed you hostility, um, your relationship with the parent was toxic, always framed you as a problem, scapegoated you, pulled at you when they needed something, but then pushed you away when they got what they needed. Okay, for that person, for that particular situation, you got to parent yourself. You're going to have to set boundaries with that parent, for one, so that you can go through the process of parenting yourself, because the parent didn't do that. You can't give that parent money. If the parent decides to be silly with you, then you need to put distance in between you. You don't need to visit that parent, because that parent is going to set you up, especially, and this is particularly for people who have been in and out of prison, but this is also for just people who have never been to prison. If you got a parent who's always provoking anger in you, eventually you're going to blow up, and that's going to be the opportunity for that parent to call the police on you. How many times have you heard about these mental health episodes where the parent called the police or something, and then there was a mental health episode, but then the police ends up shooting the person and killing them? So how did that happen? Because I think the parent didn't tell the right story. I think uh, the parent at that time presented it as a way that the person who was having a mental episode was dangerous or something like that, right? And so then the cops felt the need to kill that parent. That's a setup to me, because that can't be, that's too many times that you hear about that. So if you didn't get what you needed when you were a child, Stop looking for it in other people. There may come a time when you meet someone and you both have had the same kind of experiences, and then you are much more mature and healed, and you can come together and marry each other and love each other. Okay, that could come later in life, but for right now, you need to parent yourself. Do for you what you did not get when you were a child. That doesn't necessarily mean you need to buy yourself a fancy car. If you can't maintain a place to live, you definitely don't need a fancy car or rocks on your hand, on your arms, or something like that. Food, clothing, shelter, and be an adult. That's what you need. So, conclusion: why you may have a soul tie, and certainly I could have started with this, but I think it's much more important now. So, Matthew 13:24 to 28. Another parable he put forth to them, saying, the kingdom of heaven is like a man who sowed good seed in his field. But while men slept, his enemy came and sowed tares among the wheat and went his way. But when the grain had sprouted and produced a crop, then the tares also appeared. So the servants of the owner came and said to him, Sir, did you not sow good seed in your field? How then does it have tares? He said to them, An enemy has done this. And what this basically means, and it goes on for longer, there's a solution aspect of it too, but I didn't want to bring that in. What this means is some enemies sold a different vision for your life. If you're going back and forth into prison, someone sold a different vision for your life. Someone said you will be better suited as a person to go back and forth into prison versus God having a different vision for you. And he gave you gifts and talents, right? He might have called you to an assignment to someone or whatever. And so either you knew what your gifts and talents were and decided to not not support that ideal, or you never got the chance to discover your gifts and talents while you were free, and you might have discovered them while you were in prison, and you realize now you won't be able to use them in the way that you want to use them. It's not if you were if your gift and talent was writing or teaching, or like mine, you can still teach and write in prison, especially if you are a lifer, 25 years or more. You can still do it and you can still find some kind of fulfillment. You're going to be in prison doing it and you are among death. It's death. However, you can get free in your mind if you're not free in your body at the time, in your physical person. But if you are struggling with drugs, if you are struggling with any other type of addiction, sexual addiction, or anything like porn addiction, if you are struggling with homelessness, if you're struggling with anger, any type of struggling that you haven't resolved and haven't confronted or anything like that, that's something that an enemy sold. Someone could have said to you in your childhood, you'll never amount to anything. And then you took it and believed it and then fulfilled it, right? And you became nothing. Someone might have introduced you to drugs, right, early. You have a lot of incidences where some of these young teenagers are giving their nephews and nieces um, some marijuana, and they're smoking it on camera. Okay, well, if they give you something like that, and then here it is, you are at toddler form all the way up into young adult, you're going to be struggling with that for the rest of your life until you get help. If you had exposure to alcohol very early, sometimes your parents gave you champagne and gave you a little bit of wine at a dinner party or something like that, then you're going to find yourself struggling with that later. If you move from house to house, not by your own volition, but your parents, you were always homeless or something like that, that's a belief system. And so eventually that belief system is going to pass to you and you're going to adopt it and execute it. Those are different visions. The true vision is for you to go to school, do your chores, leave the house, get a job, pay for yourself as an adult, buy your own clothes. That's a vision. That alone is a life vision. You can have something else attached to it, like go to school. You have a dream in your heart that you want to commit to. you can have other things that come along as a result, but the but a basic simple path vision that you have for yourself, uh go get a job, keep your own place, pay for your own place thing, that's a vision. But when you find yourself doing something other than the normal, and people like to challenge the normal, what's normal, things like that. Normal is normal, standard is standard, values are values. When you see yourself doing something other than that, other than you have moved into destructive behavior, that's an enemy who has sold a different vision for your life. So now you're going to have to take that vision back, renounce it, uh, pray against it, rebuke it, and then move into the vision that God already has for your life so that you can commit to it and obey it and comply with it. It don't make any sense for you to obey the prison system. You give more obedience and compliance and support and love and ride or die mentality to the prison system and not to even your own self, even if you didn't believe God. Even if you didn't believe in God, you don't even advocate for yourself. God is your greatest advocate. He will advocate on your behalf. He will open doors that no one can close. He will give you the wisdom that you need to carry out your dreams and carry out anything that you're trying to accomplish for yourself. As much as you have trusted the prison system, why not trust God? Because the prison system, you need to perceive the prison system as an enemy to you, enemy to your plan, enemy to your life, the prison system should not be perceived as a friend. It may be something that you see that could be a blessing, that had you stayed out, you might have ended up dead or something like that. You might be able to perceive it like that, but you can't live in that mentality too long because you'll find yourself back in prison. So, solution: uproot seeds you did not plant. Identify the weeds in your life. Whatever someone said about you that is contrary to God's vision for your life is a weed. Whatever you have said about yourself that is contrary to God's vision for your life is a weed. Whatever you have done on a different path is a weed in your life. Weeds include all areas of life that are not productive and without vision. So anything that you have done, that is contrary to societal standards, contrary to the picture of yourself that you had in your head, that's a weed. The enemy sows tares among the wheat, the good seeds. And so someone has sowed the wrong seed in your life. If you see a girl, a woman today, sexually promiscuous, promiscuous, can never say that word, having issues with sex, it's because someone sowed the seed of molestation or rape in her. Same thing with a guy. If you see him moving from person to person to person to person to person and bragging about having had sex with 100 women or more, that's a weed. There's no way in the world your life is has your life was designed to have sex with 100 women, with 200 women, 300 women, 100 men, 200, 300 men. There's no way in the world that your life goal your life dream when you were younger. I want to become a prostitute. I want to become a drug dealer. I want to come I want to become a drug addict. I want to sleep with a married man. I want to have sex with a whole bunch of men, have sex with a whole bunch of women. There's no way that you had that dream. There's no way. You had a dream to become a doctor. You had a dream to become a lawyer. You had a dream to become a teacher. You had a dream to own your own business, things like that. But there's no way in the world that you had that kind of dream that you're going to do something that is destructive. I understand that people have attached a lot of money to certain criminal activities and it looks like productivity and it looks like success, but it's not success. Because if it's going to lead to jail, or prison, is not success. So any area of your life that is not productive, that is not producing good fruit, and there's no vision attached to it, of long lasting legacy building, relationship building, long standing, something that's going to outlast your lifetime, then that's a weed. So you need to uproot seeds you did not plant. Even in this pic that you see here, this is a weed way through the concrete. And now that it has forced its way through the concrete, it's blooming, but it's still a weed. It looks like something that is aspirational to, if you are experiencing hard times, keep growing, and then you'll blossom. But it's still a plant among a plant within a concrete. It's die out if it doesn't get the water. But when it's in good soil, when it is in the environment in which it's supposed to be, then it's actually going to thrive more. So, last thoughts, going back and forth to prison is not love. Break up with the soul tie. So, anything that is hurting you, creating anxiety, unproductive, no productivity, lying to you, you used it to lie to yourself. You're gonna have to break up with it. Any soul tie that you have built with the belief system, with a person, with the prison, you're gonna have to break up with it. It's gonna be painful. It's gonna hurt. Because if you've been in prison all your life, you gave up all your good years, all your life, it's going to be hard to break up with something like that because it's been a friend. And when you come out and people act up with you, you know you can go back to prison and depend upon prison. But that's not something that's going to be able to last long term because you can't give all your life to prison. That cannot be the bulk of your life contribution, what you hope to accomplish. There has to be more to your life than prison. So that means you can no longer see it from a fond, loving manner, mentality. You can't see it from that anymore. Because if you do that, you're going to find yourself coming back and rebounding and using it as a romantic aspirational ideal of yourself. People romanticize prison. You see a lot of films about prison. You see a lot of people holding it down for their partner who's in prison. No, no, don't hold it down for someone who's going back and forth in prison. If you got someone who's in prison, you're married to that person or long term with that person, and you want to work it out, okay, then you guys need to have a really good plan to work it out so the person stays out of prison and don't provoke the situation. You stick together, etc. Otherwise, you need to break up with that soul tie. If you have a person, you were holding it down. He got out the first time. You helped him, and then he went right back in. Um, Depending upon how long you want to put up with that situation, at some point you got to say, "I can't do this anymore. I got to break up with the soul tie." I'm worried all the time. I can't go to sleep. I can't get anything done. He doesn't want to stop the criminal activity. And what's going to end up happening, what you often fear, is that if you leave him alone, he's going to go with someone else and marry someone else. And that's usually what happens. When you stop feeding the monster of him going back and forth in prison, he is faced to confront himself. And what happens is they don't reward you when they come out. They reward someone else who did nothing for them. It's the same concept of men when they get on, they'll have the come up woman, use her for all her resources, run her down emotionally, mentally, psychologically. But then when they come up and make more money, they drop her and marry someone who did nothing for them and who would never do anything for them. And so it's better to break up with the soul tie now that you have your mind. Because if you stay too long in any type of situation that is not productive, it's going to affect you mentally. When you are out of the survival mode of that situation, you can feel the effects later. So it's much better to work on the fear and begin the transition process of breaking up with that soul tie. So here are some resources that I use, and so I'm likely going to study them a little longer along with some other resources. But gender differences in life, course theory of recidivism, a survival analysis, and then from the desk of Bureau of Justice Assistance, where I got some of the statistics. So my further plans are to kind of research this concept of recidivism by gender and race. I started some years ago, but I didn't stay with it or something, or it wasn't time, or it wasn't a season, or something like that. But this is going to help me to think about planning writing workshops for individuals who are in prison and who need a plan to exit prison, and that's going to come with writing. There's a scripture in the Bible about writing the vision down, and so I think because I teach and write, that's the best strategy that I would adopt for anyone who is struggling to go back and forth into prison, is to create the writing workshop interventions. All right, so now that you've gotten to the end, this is you can visit, subscribe, and follow. My website is reginayfavors.com. Then you can visit my YouTube channel, youtube.com// at Regina Y. Favors. And then I have an author store, reginayfavorsauthor.com. I also have other types of websites as well. So thank you very much for listening.